She welcome to the program. Now, Turkey's crackdown on Kurdish populations in the southeast of the country, ostensibly targeting militants, shows no sign of letting up, seeing a 12th successive day of violence and curfews. Ankar's so-called anti-terror operation extends across Turkey's southeastern regions and centers on Kurdish towns and villages. The government has mobilized 10,000 troops supported by tanks and helicopters. 7 people were killed in the latest round of clashes. The town of Cizre is one of the main focal points of the operation. We spoke to a Turkish journalist who's there now but asked not to be named. She described the situation on the ground.
Some people died. Every day they bombing the city with tanks. Many buildings burned, some schools. I think 3 or 4 schools they burned. Some of them, the army settled in the schools. Not just with the many, especially the city which wants autonomy.
Ankara insists the crackdown is aimed only at militants from the banned Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, which it considers a terrorist organization. However, more often than not, it is civilians that fall victim to the artillery used by Ankara, with 16 people reportedly now killed. Turkish media says that some 200,000 people also have fled their homes during the crackdown. Locals in Cizre report that sometimes whole families are trapped inside buildings by the army.
They are shooting from there, from that hill, from there. We will not leave our people. We will resist until the last drop of our blood.
There are always bombs, mortar shells, guns and anti-aircraft missiles. They brought all the weapons in the world and they are hitting us. There are no houses, no windows are left. The children are afraid. They have gone crazy. The house there has been hit by a bomb and a rocket. There were 7 to 8 children in there, a family.
There's a curfew and we don't leave our houses. Then they bomb our houses. If we go out, there are snipers. This is genocide, nothing else. This government is not legitimate anymore. It can't treat its people with such cruelty.
No electricity, no water. It's difficult. We're suffering.
Despite the civilian suffering, Ankara says it will intensify its efforts against Kurdish militants.
The fight against the separatist terror organization will continue until the end without hesitation.
Amid the ongoing crackdown on their towns, Kurdish fighters, along with Syrian opposition forces, are managing to drive back Islamic State in the north of Syria. The YPG militia is pushing towards a crucial dam on the Euphrates River, and capturing this would clear the way for advancing deeper into ISIL-held territories. Danny McKee from the UK Syrian Youth Movement believes Ankara's current clampdown on the Kurds is no coincidence.
Whilst the whole world is fighting a war on terror in Syria, including the Russians and the Americans to an extent, Erdogan is trying to fight the Kurdish groups. Interestingly, some of the Kurdish groups in Syria are actually allied to the United States of America, like the YPG. Erdogan has been bombing them and allowing the borders to be open for ISIS fighters and recruits to actually come in and bolster the ranks of these militants to the detriment of the Kurdish groups on the ground, who are among the only forces in Syria actually fighting these jihadist groups. Turkey is ultimately going against the coalition it's meant to be in, against these regional countries and states, against the international community in continuing its let's just say, covert support for these jihadist movements.
Meanwhile, tensions are mounting across Turkey. Clashes erupted in Istanbul on Thursday night as pro-Kurdish demonstrators clashed with riot police, firing dozens of Molotov cocktails and firecrackers at the officers. They responded by deploying water cannon and tear gas. Despite the Russian military's efforts to devastate Islamic State's oil smuggling operations, the multi-million-dollar illegal trade is still in full swing. That's according to Russia's defense ministry, and it also says the terrorists are using new tactics to transport oil. Our Tudor has more.
It's been over 3 weeks now since the Russian Ministry of Defense has presented detailed satellite evidence on the activities of oil smuggling from ISIL into Turkey, and it appears that the situation is ongoing. Now, in a recent report, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense, they've said that heavy-duty truckloads with oil continue to cross the Turkey-Syrian border. Since the start of Russia's military campaign in Syria, the country's forces destroyed up to 2,000 tankers used to transport oil, as well as the number of oil production facilities. Recently, Russian intelligence spotted up to 12,000 trucks, as well as tankers on the Turkish-Iraqi border. And while the number of oil smuggling operations has diminished, it still continues with new tactics. The smugglers are disguising their convoys and moving strictly at night. Now, the number of trucks used in the so-called Western route has diminished, so that means terrorists are changing their routes to Iraq, but the final destination still is Turkey. Russian armed forces have been calling for broader cooperation with other countries that are fighting against the spread of terrorism. Russia's once again voiced that they're willing to join forces with the US-led coalition in Syria. The Russian MOD says it will present them with information like locations and other data on IS objects, and in return they would expect that the coalition present them with the same. However, Washington has said that it's not ready for such a move.
It's Christmas Day for Christians all over the world. Traditionally, it's a time of hope and peace, and that's true also in war-ravaged Syria, despite the grim daily reality in many parts of the country. But despite the carnage, Syrians are showing festive unity and expressing hope for a peaceful future. Moran Gazdiyev reports from Damascus.
Thank you. It's Christmas Day in Damascus, and celebrations are in full swing. Everybody's determined to make the most of this opportunity, because the last 5 years haven't been very kind to Christians in Syria. There are 400,000 of them in Damascus, 10% of the Syrian population. And with the civil war, they especially have had a hard time.
But not today.
I feel great. We feel safe here. Thanks to the army and police, my family can walk the streets in peace.
Things are changing, and I feel this year will be better for us all. We're celebrating our unity, our army, our country. I feel sorry for all who were forced to flee, to leave their homes, but I have hope yet for Syria.
I can only hope my child has a better life here in Syria.
Things will return to how they were, but Syria will take a long time to heal.
Hope and revelry were everywhere.
Scenes like this are playing out all over Damascus. You have celebrations, festivals, concerts taking place in Christian neighborhoods and public squares, and even Muslims are joining in.
These shopkeepers' children, for example, are Muslim, yet wearing Christmas hats, which they insisted I also put on.
We've all come together. I don't care about Sunni or Muslims or Christians. The most important thing is that we're all celebrating, and Syria will again become what it was, where we can be whatever we want to be.
Unfortunately, not all people think this way.
Damascus has become something of a refugee center for Christians from all over Syria who've been fleeing persecution at the hands of the Sunni-led rebels. And here they are now, Protestants, Catholics, Yazidis, Orthodox Christians.
And Muslims, people of all denominations who live together here, or who have been driven here by Islamists, all united today in revelry. A welcome throwback to happier times. Moran Gazdiyev, RT, from Damascus, Syria.